Okay, and I see the screen here. It says broadcast starting soon, and there's a play and pause button. What is that for?
Yeah, so that is something we're using a very well-known streaming platform, which is called Vimeo, and that's just a built-in feature in that one.
Okay, because I press pause. Should I press play?
Yeah, actually, you don't need to have that running really. So it's the
I don't know. I cannot see them. Are they see us? Keep talking. Okay. Keep talking. Okay. I'm not sure if they hear us.
I think they do.
We hear you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. But we don't hear them though. Or no. Should we try this to see if we hear them via Zoom?
Yeah, let's see. 20, will you be speaking to us or will you just contact us in the Zoom chat? Yeah, we'll see. As long as they write that it's okay, that it will be fine. And if you run into any technical issues during the presentation,
but we could hear you, Maggie.
Listening in all the time. I will mute myself. I won't be visible there, but I will be listening to you in the background. So just either write to me in the chat or.
I wonder who this
you can
is.
Also speak to me. I will be listening
this is
the whole session.
The voice of God. I will be there with you always. Okay, well, we could hear Maggie earlier during the sound check, so she couldn't hear us. Could you just tell her that we heard her, though?
People on Zoom, can you hear us? Maggie, do a little wave. Okej. Ja, det var ju bra.
WHO, and this is a session on the Integrated Monitoring Initiative and efforts for enhancing monitoring of gender across SDG 6. I'll start by saying just a few words about the Integrated Monitoring Initiative and then pass it over to a remote colleague, Maggie Kosida, who will talk about the Gender Initiative. So you might not have heard about the Integrated Monitoring Initiative for SDG 6. All it is it's a project or a coalition hosted by UN Water of all the different agencies that are involved in monitoring the different targets of SDG 6 on water and sanitation. So there are 12 technical targets here, 12 targets for the 6 technical goals, and also the 6 targets, the 6 technical targets, and the 2 means of implementation targets. Each of them has 1 or sometimes 2 indicators, and you can see in the table here that there are different custodian agencies, often UN agencies, who are charged with the global monitoring of these indicators. So the purpose of the Integrated Monitoring Initiative then is for those agencies to work together, to coordinate, and to make sure that we're all speaking to each other for the monitoring of the goal as a whole. So the Integrated Monitoring Initiative has a 16-year lifespan, and we have a goal of accelerating the achievement of SDG 6 by increasing the availability, but also the analysis and use of high-quality data around the different targets and indicators. We're organized into 4 sets of phases, 4 phases of about 4 years each. So the first phase was really just to establish the new indicators and methods and definitions and to come up with global baselines. We followed that with a second phase to build national ownership and to mainstream these ideas and concepts into monitoring systems. Now we're in the third phase, which is to really more fully integrate the monitoring systems into national statistical systems and to become mainstream more than a new initiative. And we'll hope to follow that with a 4th phase around consolidating and sustaining and also planning for whatever will come after the SDGs. So some of the things that the Integrated Monitoring Initiative has achieved so far are establishing a network of focal points. We have focal points in nearly all member states. Overall focal points, specific focal points. Sometimes there are focal points for one SDG indicator, sometimes for the whole of Goal 6, sometimes for all of the SDGs. And engaging in capacity building and promoting institutional processes for integrated monitoring. And we've seen over the past several years that the number of indicators that member states have been able to report on within SDG 6 has been increasing. It's now an average of 8.5, up from an average of 7 at the start or back in 2019. And there are 102 member states that could report on at least 9 of those 12 indicators. We're also trying to move from just having a snapshot to looking at trends. That's sometimes more useful even than a snapshot. And trend analysis is now possible for 10 of the 12 global indicators. So in this third phase now, we have 2 main outcomes and several outputs that lead to those outcomes. So the first outcome is around collecting and reporting of the indicator data for the different SDG 6 indicators. That includes establishing frameworks, providing some technical support to countries to fill data gaps, collecting and validating data coming from countries, and then publishing those in global reports. But the second outcome is about use of data by policy and decision makers at different levels. So there, again, we're trying to work with countries to support not just the collection and production of data, but how it is used and how it can inform planning and programming. And that can happen at the country level, it can happen at the regional or global level, it can be government, it can be non-government. We can consider use of data that's specific to one specific sector, that's in 2.2, or cross-cutting and looking at the different indicators and what message they can tell as a holistic picture and trying to use them holistically. And again, to coordinate the global monitoring and reporting and keep improving the number of indicators and the quality of data that are reported. So within phase 3 then, there are a couple of key activities we'll be working on. Many of the agencies have a data drive to collect new data. There's one underway now to support a number of indicator reports that'll come out next year. And again, in 2026, 27, there'll be a second or an additional round of data drives. And usually after all of the indicators have been updated, there's also a synthesis report. So earlier this year, there was an SDG 6 synthesis report published. And we hope that that helps stimulate the use of data for policymaking and investment decisions. We're also trying to go beyond the simple analysis of individual indicators and look at linkages, to look at cross-cutting links, and also to do more in-depth disaggregation. So not just looking at the indicator, but how does the indicator vary within a country by different stratifiers, by basin, or by how does it intersect with climate change? How does it intersect with gender, which we're going to be speaking about today. And while these global programs have limited capacity for technical support, we are trying to work intensively with small numbers of countries around specific issues like gender, and you'll be hearing about some of those today. So this is my last slide before I hand it over to Maggie Kosida at UN Water. But if you would like more information about the Integrated Monitoring Initiative, we have these 2 websites. The first one is text-based. It describes the methodologies, it has the indicator reports on it. That's sdg6monitoring.org. And the second one is a data portal, which you can visit to generate your own graphs and tables and see all of those different global indicators at one stop. So please do visit those sites. And then let me now turn over the microphone to Maggie, who's online in the Zoom room. And we can also transfer the screen to Maggie so she can advance her own slides, if that's possible. There she is. Slides, if that's possible. Okay, Maggie, we can see you. Can you go ahead and give us a sound check?
Yes, hello from my side. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're just working to get your screen shared. Or maybe you need to share your screen on the Zoom link.
I have already shared my screen. I don't know if you can see it.
You're good to go, Maggie. Over to you.
Yes, hello from my side. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're just working to get you or maybe you need to share your screen on the Zoom link.
I have already shared my screen. I don't know if you can see it. Yes, hello from my side. Can you hear me? I've already shared my screen. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, I can share back my echo a couple of times. I'm not sure how clearly you can hear me in the room, but I will keep talking. So my name is Maggie Kosida. I'm a gender specialist for the Integrated Monitoring Initiative for SDG 6. With this presentation, I will show you for a couple of times. I'm not sure Well, with this presentation, I will be presenting you a little bit what we have done so far on gender contextualization. Sorry. I need to pause because I hear my voice. But with this presentation, I will be presenting you a little bit what we have done so far on gender contextualization. Sorry, I need to pause because I hear my voice. But with this presentation, I will be presenting you a little bit what we have done so far on gender contextualization. Can technical supports help us? I hear my own voice and I cannot speak over my voice. Can technical support help us? I hear my own voice and I cannot speak over my voice.
Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I will again try to do this. I'm not sure how clearly you can hear me in the room. So I will be giving you an overview of what the IMI SDG had done so far regarding gender contextualization of the SDG 6 indicators. But before that, I want to touch a little bit on the gender and water nexus and why gender and water are linked. Gender and water are tightly linked as gender relations play an important role in determining the different opportunities and the vulnerabilities of accessing and using water resources and knowledge around water. Literature has shown that women and girls are disproportionately affected by the lack of safe drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene services, but also they have less ability to access and decide over water resources, management, and planning. The crucial role that gender in water resources and water use-related aspects is playing has unfortunately only been partially reflected so far in different policies and institutional arrangements. And part of this reason may be the lack of robust and consistent sex-disaggregated data and gender-sensitive water data, which would help us sustain and develop a baseline knowledge related to water and gender. Regarding the specific gender context within SDG 6, we have first in mind two overarching goals. So the overarching goal related to SDG 6 to mainstream data to policy. In fact, we want to be able at the general picture to adapt SDG 6 global indicators to be meaningful at national and subnational level. And the SDG 6 indicators should contribute to reducing the gap in water resources related and water use related social, economic, or environmental vulnerabilities. So under this prism, gender gap can be one of these aspects and relevance. Yet gender as a stratifier of inequality within the SDG 6 is not well reflected. And the potential for a reflection of gender aspects within SDG 6 is high and is linked to the complementary analysis or aggregation of the information provided by the global indicators with other relevant data and the lines that are being formulated together with the country experience, the country context. So we're not actually looking to disaggregate the global indicators as such. We're looking to complement the information provided by the global indicators with additional information on gender, sort of help us in contextualizing gender within the SDG 6. And this has been seen as an opportunity, but also as a challenge for the majority of SDG 6 global indicators. So what is the relevance of gender within SDG 6 indicators? I would say that capturing the gender and water cause-effect relations for each SDG 6 global indicator, for example, capturing the gender-sensitive drivers, the pressures, the impacts of gender in relation to the different water and sanitation aspects, this is what we're targeting. And this can help us reducing gender inequalities and promote equal benefits and opportunities in water resources and sanitation. So it's not only 6.1 and 6.2, the WASH indicators, which are, which have the potential to convey a message per gender group, let's say, on issues of access and ability to meet WASH needs, affordability, menstrual health. But we see that most of the SDG 6 global indicators have potential for a meaningful contextualization by gender. For instance, for SDG 6.4.2 on water stress, we can zoom into issues of accessibility to water and technology, water tenure rights, water permits, land use rights per gender group. Regarding, for example, SDG 651 on integrated water resources management, this indicator already considers the inclusion of gender in water resources management laws and plans, but there is also potential for developing this further and examining specific enablers like the high-level commitment, the advocacy, the governance that can show us or reveal issues related to gender and water resources management. Similarly, for example, SDG 6.5 on support to developing countries, we could look in the official development aid with gender equality as a principal or significant objective. Similarly, SDG 651 on participation has the potential to cast a magnifying glass on the representation of women in public participation in water and sanitation and in their contribution to managing decisions. And finally, we have this indicator 631, 632, and 661, which also have a potential for a meaningful contextualization by gender when we look at the impacts and when we analyze the impacts under a gender lens. So how are the impacts distributed? Who is able to better adapt and why? Who bears the cost, and so on. So it's not, the common 6.1, 6.2 WASH indicators that only have a, let's say, context for gender or a potential for gender contextualization, but you can see here some explanations why and how the additional SDG 6 indicators can also be seen under a gender prism. So regarding the IMI SDG activities, we started back in end of 2021, early 2022, with an inventory of existing tools and approaches for gender contextualization in relation to SDG 6. This inventory presents a variety of existing tools, around 80 products of various types and scales, which attempt to contextualize gender aspects in water and sanitation management. Then the different indicator working groups of the IMI conducted an internal assessment review of how gender is currently represented in the SDG 6 indicators and moved forward with suggesting some specific methods or methodological approach on how we could better contextualize gender for each SDG 6 global indicator. We had, once these methodologies were suggested, we had a stakeholder and expert consultation We involved 33 gender experts around the world to discuss and share perspectives on the feasibility of the different methodological approaches. And then we moved to the pilot testing of our methodologies and gender relevant indicators. So the pilot testing so far is running, actually has been concluded with Brazil, but it's still running with Senegal and Philippines. There is a potential also we might engage South Africa and State of Palestine. And this pilot testing engages countries into testing the actual methods that we have developed and the set of gender relevant indicators regarding their feasibility and added value, and giving us feedback. Once the pilot testing is completed, we will move into the development and adaptation of the suggested tools, and then we will move into phase 3, which is implementation and capacity building. So for phase 3, which will start in 2024, maybe even a bit earlier, we will identify the different capacity needs of the countries, and then we will implement capacity building activities. This could be in the form of regional or global webinars covering the entire contextualization framework or specific gender relevant indicators, how you formulate them, how you calculated them, or specific country support and technical assistance. Very quickly, because I know I don't have, I just have a couple of minutes. Here you can see some more information about the pilot testings we did with the countries. We developed an assessment framework for this purpose, and this is available online if you want to download it. A total of 115 gender relevant indicators are listed in this assessment framework across all the 11 global SDG 6 indicators. And we have categorized them under 5 main policy objectives: equal opportunities, equal benefits, shared responsibilities, gender impartial impacts alleviation, and gender sensitive enabling actions. So these indicators are assessed against the common set of criteria, including data availability and feasibility, relevance and added value, representativeness, and suitability of the indicators. And at the end, the pilot countries will come up with a short or a priority list and tell us that, you know, of all these 115 indicators, these are the ones, a restricted list, that we feel are feasible and applicable for the context of our country. These are just some examples of the gender relevant indicators per global indicator and per policy objective. You can download the framework and look at them all. And just to wrap up, I would like to say that you can access different resources that we have. We have the website section on the IMI SDG website on gender contextualization. You can download the assessment framework for the pilot testing. You can also download the inventory of existing tools and approaches. And we invite you all to engage with us. You can email us at our monitoring account with a subject line SDG 6 gender contextualization, and you can express your interest in either using our assessment framework or in participating in our capacity building activities that will follow. Thank you very much. Sorry, I don't know how well I could be heard in the room. I had some technical issues, but this is from my side, and I will pass the work back to the on-site speakers, actually to the panel discussion. And here, our moderator for the discussion will be Ms. Laura Imburgia from UNESCO WAWAP. And we have 3 panelists from Brazil, Senegal, and South Africa. I will stop here and pass the work back to the room, to Laura, to pick up from here. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Maggie. And you were heard very, very well. So it was fine. Thank you all and good morning. So my name is Laura Imburgia. And now we will move to our panel discussion. Member states will share their experiences on contextualizing gender within the water and sanitation sector. So we are lucky today to have 3 of the countries, Brazil, Senegal, that are already involved in the pilot process, and South Africa. And before introducing our speakers, let me invite the audience on Zoom to share their comments or questions on the chat. So then when we have the slot for the Q&A, we can have their inputs as well. So it is my pleasure now to introduce our 3 panelists, Ana Carolina Argolo Nascimento de Castro, Director at the National Water and Sanitation Agency, Ana, of Brazil. Okay. Ms. Maimouna Dion Diarra, Technical Advisor, Coordinator of the Gender Unit, Ministry of Water and Sanitation of Senegal. Both of them are present here today. So Maimouna, you can come to the stage. And we have our other panelists all connected online, Ms. Petunia Ramune Nenjiwa, leading the Intergovernmental Relations and Sector Transform at the Department of Water and Sanitation of South Africa. So we have 3 questions for our panel. We will have one of them leading the responses, and then the other 2 complementing. So as we have heard before, so gender, water management, and water governance are tightly linked, as gender relations play an important role in determining the possibility of accessing and using resources and knowledge. To date, the inclusion of gender as a stratifier of inequality within the SDG 6 global indicators has been poorly considered. Part of the reason may lie in the lack of advocacy, a high-level commitment, or the lack of a coherent policy framework that promotes and enables the analysis of gender aspects and related intersectionalities within the water and sanitation sector. A weak or fragmented institutional setting, such as poor multisectoral coordination, silos, lack of resources, and lack of dedicated gender expertise, or the lack of robust, consistent, sex-disaggregated, and gender-sensitive water data may also constrain the development of a gender baseline knowledge related to water. So our question for the panel is, what does currently exist in your country in relation to SDG 6 targets and indicators and their links to gender aspects specifically? Do the institutions responsible for monitoring SDG 6 take into account the gender dimension in relation to water and sanitation monitoring and analysis? Dear Petunia, online, we will pass the floor to you for this first response.
Thank you, moderator. Good morning, everyone online. I would like to take this opportunity to present what we have in South Africa. Let me also acknowledge the presence of all the esteemed guests that are there. And from South Africa, we are saying that as a department, we are expected to implement transformation imperatives with the aim to attain gender equality, women empowerment, transformation, to redress the imbalances of the past through programs and projects that we implement in our country. We bear the sole responsibility so that we achieve the SDG goals, and we are accelerating that. So we, as a department, we have committed that there should be inclusivity in the water and sanitation business. And we are working tirelessly to ensure that not only gender mainstreaming is part of our work, but the mainstreaming should also be happening for the youth and people with disabilities. And this is a commitment that has been made through our minister, even when he was in New York, that as we work with gender issues, the youth must be brought in, people with disabilities must also be brought in. How do we do this? From a governance perspective, we're considering that the high stakes on governance arrangement for water management, we promote gender equality in decision making and ensure that the women's voices are always heard. We know that women have got the knowledge and the local natural resources and the skills in the household in terms of water service and water resource management. We have integrated gender equality in both public and private sector in the water space. Currently, within the department itself, we've got a percentage of women in senior management positions, which is over 45%, and there's about 44.3% of females in the department. And in the entities that are linked to our department, we also having we've got female CEOs that are very good in ensuring that there's also female board members who themselves encourage other women to enter and pursue a career in the water sector. We have also looked at how partnership can assist in advancing gender equality by involving all the relevant stakeholders. The citizens and the civil society are participating. We also have across all the 9 provinces in our country, at a local space, in the municipal space, we've got different forums which we refer to as community and water forums, who are the eyes and ears who are advancing gender issues, and this is overseen by our department. And what is interesting, and rightfully so, is that there is high participation of women in those water and sanitation forums. I would have added, if I don't indicate, that the legislative policy and framework of our government are enablers for us to advance gender equality within the SDG. And through the Commission of Gender Equality, which promotes gender issues and protect the interest thereof, we are able to report continuously around what, as a department, we are doing. We also look at issues of gender budgeting, gender planning, budgeting, and monitoring. This is also part of a high-level forum where the director generals of all the departments meet, and our department is also reporting and participating in that meeting. I'm also a member of that forum, and we are able to indicate the progress that we are doing to achieve the SDGs in relation to gender mainstreaming. That does not mean that there are no challenges. There is still a lot that needs to be done in terms of how the planning of project-based that will assist in ensuring that the water and sanitation objectives are met is done. There's also an issue around gender-based budgeting that has to improve as much as we are reporting, but when we compare the amount of the allocations that are out there versus how the women, the females, the female youth are benefiting from the Black economic empowerment, we feel there is more that still needs to be done. Internally, as a department, we are also now having to review our gender policy so that it is more gender sensitive. We have identified through some of the work that we've done in the past few years that with all the developments that are happening, there is a need to review the work that we are doing. From a high level commitment and also looking at how we change the situation. Our country currently is having an upsurge on gender-based violence and femicide cases, and this is mostly on women. And that vulnerability around areas where access of water is still not at a household community is perpetuating also the gender-based violence. Government has committed through what is called the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, where we also contribute in terms of what the WASH sector is doing to alleviate this. And again, to repeat, the fast tracking of project implementation to ensure that everybody has access, which is safe, and not created in a space environment where there will be gender-based violence is what is critical. And also the emancipation of women from the poverty that they face through the broad-based economic empowerment is one of the avenues that we are looking at to ensure that women also benefit. With regard to whether the institution responsible for monitoring take into account the gender dimension, I would say partly yes, partly no, because with some of the evaluation of the programs and plans that are in place, there is a notable improvement from the past 5-6 years. And we have seen that all the institutions that we are working with that are part of the department and also from the private sector, in some of the private sector, there is dedicated human resources and capacity that is dedicated to implement gender mainstreaming work. There's also
Petunia,
notable.
so we will need to run up. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. There's notable progress also in terms of commitment on performance. And from our side, we feel that the gender mainstreaming should be driven by senior managers who should be held accountable for implementation through the performance agreement. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Petunia. Now I will give the floor to our representative of Brazil, Ana Carolina, for her insight. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here talking about something so important. So let's go. Internally, ANA implemented in 2016 the Pro-Gender Equity Committee, created to be the channel for dialogue between ANA and workers on the subject. It is the body responsible for monitoring and subsidizing the evaluation of the fulfillment of objectives, goals, priorities, and actions defined in the National Plan of Policies for Women of the Presidency of the Republic. It was a consultative and propositional character that has been promoting studies and mobilizing activities in this subject, such as lectures, promotion of opportunities for participation, and representation of groups of users and water managers. In 2018, ANA was recognized by the international organization, the Global Partnership for Water, GWP, as a golden example for having created the Pro-Gender Committee, Equity Committee, in its organizational structure. The agency's action created in 2016 deserved such recognition for aligning with the GWP's gender strategy, which aims to make inclusion and gender equity central objectives of action. Finally, in August 2022, the Women for Water Talent Platform was launched. It's a platform online with the objectives to presenting women specialized in water resources and basic sanitation too, to facilitate the contact with these professionals by promoting the simplifying curriculum and contacting them. And the tool is a result of a partnership between ANA and the Forum and the National Forum of River Basins Committees. The committees have everyone, you know that, like the people from the civil society and government. And two, we have the participation of the Brazilian Association of Water Resources and the Brazil Network of River Basins Organizations. This is just an example of how we use the targets of SDG 6 in the agency.
Thank you. Also for keeping within the time. So now I invite the audience here to use your interpretation. And I invite our next speaker, Ms. Maimouna. I give the floor to you.
Bonjour tout le monde. Vous m'entendez? Je suis Madame Diarra, Maimouna Dione du Sénégal. J'ai vraiment le plaisir de partager ce plateau. D'abord, je vais adresser des mots de salutation à mes chers panélistes avec qui je partage le plateau, mais présenter aussi mes salutations à toute l'équipe de SIMI, SDG 6, et faire un coucou à mes collègues du Sénégal. Donc pour cette question, nous n'allons pas rester un peu longtemps sur cette question. Quelques éléments pour partager ce que nous sommes en train de faire au Sénégal, aussi bien au niveau stratégique surtout, mais au niveau opérationnel. Pour la situation du pays, concernant les cibles et les indicateurs de l'ODD 6 et leur lien avec les genres, comme je viens de le dire tantôt, des efforts ont été consentis et reposent surtout au niveau stratégique sur les engagements d'abord, parce qu'on ne peut pas rien faire sans les engagements, sans la ratification des engagements au niveau international. Donc, le Sénégal a ratifié la Convention sur l'élimination des formes à l'égard de toute forme de discrimination pour les femmes, le CEDEF, en 1979, mais également le protocole de Maputo pour les droits des femmes en Afrique en 2003. Il ajoute l'acte additionnel pour l'égalité hommes-femmes au niveau de notre communauté, de l'espace CEDEAO, la communauté économique des États de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Le Sénégal a aussi s'aligne sur les ODD. Pour le ministère de l'eau, évidemment, le ministère de l'eau s'aligne sur la politique du Sénégal à travers la lettre de politique sectorielle de développement qui a été initiée en 2016-2026, qui est en phase avec la stratégie nationale de l'équité et l'égalité de genre, qui est arythmée avec le plan Sénégal émergent, fortement mais avec le plan Sénégal émergent. Nous avons au niveau du département de l'eau et de l'assainissement, qui s'aligne toujours sur les politiques de l'État, la stratégie. Nous avons élaboré une stratégie qui inclut un plan d'institutionnalisation de genre avec la création de la cellule au niveau de l'organigramme du ministère, la création de la cellule genre. Dans ce volet toujours, cet aspect stratégique, nous avons dans le plan d'institutionnalisation du genre un volet important de renforcement de capacité à l'endroit des femmes du ministère pour leur leadership, leur autonomisation, mais au niveau aussi, au niveau, comment je l'ai dit, au niveau local, nous avons des renforcements du leadership des femmes au niveau, surtout au niveau de la mise en œuvre, si je veux m'exprimer ainsi. Maintenant, s'y ajoute au niveau opérationnel des initiatives. Pour les initiatives pour la réalisation des engagements pays dans le suivi de l'ODD en lien avec les genres, nous avons l'initiative, j'ai mis tantôt évoquée ici, pour le suivi intégré.
So we need to wrap up, and then we will continue. Also, you can continue sharing with the rest of the questions, so the actions. Thank you. So thank you. So thank you very much. And we will pass to our next question. And as we mentioned before, we have one of our speakers leading the responses and the insights from the country experience. and the other countries complement to what this lead speaker is sharing with us. So also coming back to the presentation that we first saw, starting in 2021, the indicator working groups of the SDG 6 global indicators have outlined draft methods and approaches for gender contextualization of each of the 11 SDG 6 global indicators and produce as an output a relevant report per indicator. A pilot testing process has been initiated in April 2022, where a small number of countries representing a range of capacities and contexts have tested under realistic conditions the aforementioned methodologies proposed by the indicator working group. These countries include, so far as we learned before, Brazil, Senegal, and the Philippines. And the objective of the pilot testing was to assess the relevance, feasibility, and added value of these suggested methods and approaches, including the set of gender-relevant indicators. This to support national or sub-national policy needs at the member states' effort to internalize gender aspects in their water and sanitation management. We have heard so far from the 3 countries that there are really enable environments for this implementation. So dear panelists, could you share your country experience from the IMI SDG 6 pilot exercise on gender contextualization of the SDG 6 global indicators? It will be useful for us to hear your reflections on the institutional dimensions, for example, actors, stakeholders involved, their roles, their institutional and collaboration bottlenecks, other reflection on expertise and technical aspects that you would like to share, main challenges, barriers. And in this moment, I will pass the floor to Ana Carolina to lead these insights.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Regarding the study carried out, after researching the partners' organizations, contacts were made with 10 institutions, most of them governmental. In the contacts made, the collaboration requested from the organizations referred to obtain information related to proposed indicators so that the most viable ones in Brazil could be identified for future monitoring. That is, if there is data collection on different teams and the availability or possibility of disaggregation of this data by sex. We identified that 22 indicators have partially available data, and 13 indicators have full available data, most of which are provided or from ANA, or data from ANA, or data from the institution responsible for the national census in Brazil, that is called IBGE. It was noticed that about 78 indicators, there is no data available in the country, considering those which no organizations were identified for consultation, and the responses from our organization consulted about the non-availability of data. And this covered mainly those that address the themes of transboundary management, wastewater, and others, and some of them required further investigations to obtain this information. Institutional, methodological, technical difficulties were evidenced for the use of different proposed indicators, the lack of analysis of some teams, the non-availability of time series too, limitations in terms of scale, disaggregation by sex, in addition to other groups such as age, color, race, income classes, people with disabilities, geographic locations, among others topics. We observed that there is still a large gap in obtaining this data, disaggregated by gender, in addition to the lack of databases integration between the agencies. So another point an important point is that is the dispersion of information by different institutions and databases, which implies spending more time in obtaining and integrating this data to acquire the desired information. It is therefore this is therefore important point to say here is that in that stage of the pre-pilot, it has not yet been possible to calculate the indicators. The focus was on seeking to understand the proposed indicators, in addition to identifying partners, institutions, aligning research, and proposed indicators and possible databases for disaggregation by gender, current or future. To proceed, it is understood that in order to develop methodologies for some indicators, in addition to strengthening the already established cooperation network, will be necessary to expand it and mobilize resources, training, and guidelines for the establishment of new indicators.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
So as Brazil being the first pilot or pre-pilot has been a very, very important experience for all the process. So thank you for sharing that with us. And now I will pass the floor back to Maimouna for your insight. Maimouna, please.
Merci, cher modérateur. Pour le Sénégal, ce deuxième point porte sur deux éléments. D'abord sur le processus méthodologique avec le ciblage. Pour l'équipe du Sénégal qui était composée pluridisciplinaire avec une participation inclusive, s'est focalisée d'abord sur une cartographie d'abord. On a réfléchi beaucoup sur la cartographie des acteurs, les sectoriels, les ministères, ceux qui travaillent purement pour les aspects genre. Donc cette cartographie nous a permis de faire un ciblage des organisations en rapport avec le genre et qui sont dans le mécanisme qu'on appelle le mécanisme national genre. Nous avons ensuite ciblé les entités qui sont producteurs mais utilisateurs de données pour un peu, comment dirais-je, enrichir l'équipe et ensuite enfin les sectoriels, les ONG et la société civile. Ce qu'on a appelé en fait le ciblage, c'est le premier point. Le deuxième, c'est concernant maintenant l'exercice proprement dit au niveau des travaux. Nous avons procédé par un profilage, c'est-à-dire les groupes de texte, les groupes de travail étaient dirigés par des têtes de file, tels que par exemple pour la DGPRE, c'était le point focal. C'était le point focal pays, pour les indicateurs 6.2, 6A, GMP suivi par la plateforme GMP, c'était la cellule de coordination et de suivi des programmes. D'une manière c'est comme ça que nous avons procédé. Maintenant, lors des travaux, on s'est rendu compte qu'il y avait beaucoup de contraintes, beaucoup de goulots d'étranglement par l'absence d'appropriation du cadre, parce que nous avons pris connaissance du cadre en même temps que les membres des groupes de travail. Donc ça a constitué vraiment un problème il y avait des problèmes en termes de compréhension. On n'avait pas la même compréhension parce que ça rendait difficile l'exercice. Nous avons aussi un autre point pour les contraintes, les goulots d'étranglement. Le cadre était trop lourd. Nous avons 115 indicateurs à renseigner, donc c'était trop lourd. Non seulement il y a la compréhension, mais la lourdeur du cadre. Donc il fallait simplifier. Et enfin, pour le renseignement, on ne disposait pas de liste un guide de remplissage pour pouvoir harmoniser, ce qui a rendu un peu difficile beaucoup de temps, beaucoup d'efforts consentis pour ce travail. Voilà ce que je voulais ajouter à ma chère panéliste. Merci.
Well, thank you very much. And this is, of course, very important to also learn how a new country, a new pilot has been able to suggest modifications for making it more effective. And now I will pass the floor again online to our colleague Perunia, connected from South Africa. South Africa hasn't started the pilot, and it is also important for us to have, Perunia, your reflections on how you envision the potential for the implementation of the pilot in your country. So the floor is yours, Petunia.
Thank you very much once more. And as South Africa, we have been part of the process from its conception. And I would want to indicate that when it comes to issues of stakeholder management and participation, that is not a problem at all for us, because that's how we normally operate. From the SDG 6, we do have working groups where it involves different stakeholders, and there are task teams per sub-indicator to report around that. And the decision that has been taken is that from each of those task teams, the issues of gender should then also be a standing agenda item for discussion, so that we do not create a stakeholder participation fatigue if we create a separate one. And by doing that also, at a high level, we've got what we call the Water and Sanitation Sector Leadership Group, which is the highest body in the water sector, bringing all different stakeholders together to engage, advise on water and sanitation, to oversee also the SDG implementation. And besides that, there's also from the entities, the CEOs of the water entities that we have, they've got a forum where they also engage. And we've recently agreed that in terms of their agenda item, the issue of gender mainstreaming must then be part of that. Without really listing all of that, the number of forums that we have, I would just indicate that from a stakeholder participation, we will move smoothly. We are just waiting to finalize some of the processes that we have to adhere to as a country for us to start. There are roles of the different stakeholders is very critical, because they bring in different ideas, different skill set that we require. But in terms of also what are the needed skills from the work that we're currently doing, and also the experience that we've had in the past, I think there's more that needs to be done. This pilot will be very important. There's more that needs to be done from a research perspective around gender contextualization. We are working close in hand with the Water Research Commission to also look into how must improve the consolidation of our database in relation to the gender mainstream in the water sector. The lessons that we've picked up in terms of the different platforms where we are engaging on gender is that if gender mainstreaming is not part of the agenda, you would not find people voluntarily, if I may use the word, raising issues of gender. What we have observed is that it's only when there's an agenda item on gender, or it's an expert on gender that is talking about something, and then they throw in the issues of gender and the gender mainstreaming. So as I said, with the participation of different people, gender experts in the local space at project implementation and budgeting, we are now improving around how issues of gender become part of the discussion, part of the normal business, without it being, by the way, a type of discussion. I thank you.
Petunia. So, of your country in this all this effort. And I will now move to our third question. As previously mentioned, the indicator working group of the SDG 6 global indicators have outlined draft methods and approaches for gender contextualization of each of the 11 SDG 6 global indicators. And with this, we have suggested the framework of SDG 6 gender-relevant indicators as a tool that can help countries address their national, subnational, and or local policy needs. This framework contains a set of gender-relevant indicators for each SDG 6 global indicator and could potentially promote the development of a gender-disaggregated data collection mechanism at different scales. It can be country, regional, or local scale, and the related analysis of gender-relevant indicators for water and sanitation, monitoring, and policy making. So our last question for the panel is if that such framework could bring an added value to your policy-making process, and what are the main barriers and constraints in integrating a gender-relevant analysis within the SDG 6 national and global indicators, either using this tool or other method, and also if you could share what specific capacity building needs can you identify and that could help overcome these barriers. So our lead speaker will be Maimouna. So please, Maimouna, I give you the floor.
Merci, cher modérateur. Pour cette question, le cas de test tel libellé, nous jugeons que c'est pertinent et a une valeur ajoutée qui pourrait, dans le processus d'élaboration des politiques. Je m'explique. En réalité, ce qui est visé de la politique de l'eau et de l'assainissement en matière d'équité et d'inclusion sociale, c'est d'avoir des politiques qui impactent les hommes, les femmes, les filles et les garçons. Donc, à l'analyse du cadre qui est sorti des résultats des travaux de contextualisation, nous pensons que ce cadre apporterait une valeur ajoutée. Il permettrait aux décideurs, aussi bien au niveau stratégique comme opérationnel, de prendre les meilleures orientations, les meilleures politiques inclusives qui sont à même de répondre aux besoins des filles, des femmes, des hommes et des garçons qui sont identifiés en matière d'eau et d'assainissement. Également, par conséquent, le ciblage de l'investissement, parce que nous avons travaillé sur nos données. Pour la pertinence, nous avons eu un score, parce que les notes étaient de 1 à 5. Et pour la pertinence, nous avons une note de 3,9, rien que pour la pertinence, vous voyez. Pour le ciblage des investissements, nous avions une note de 3,7. Donc, évidemment, par conséquent, le ciblage de l'investissement reposera sur des situations de référence de données factuelles qui sont connues et qui sont assez maîtrisées pour la prise en compte des besoins socio-spécifiques. Et forcément, la planification répondra à ce besoin, avec un score de 3,6 environ. Et nous avons l'alignement, d'où l'alignement de la mise en œuvre et la reddition des comptes, forcément, c'est inévitable. Pour le dernier point sur la pertinence, nous avons aussi l'écosystème d'acteurs. Ça va régler le problème de la coordination qui est comment dirais-je, menée par la tutelle technique, le ministère de l'eau et de l'assainissement. Ça va faciliter. Parce que nous avons en ce moment une centralisation plus ou moins des données au niveau national. Maintenant, il y a beaucoup d'obstacles qu'il faut souligner. Les problèmes de disponibilité de données. Si nous analysons les tableaux, les résultats qui sont ici, nous avons, comment dirais-je, des données qui sont partielles, des données partielles. Donc, ça pose un problème comment dirais-je, de suivi, ou bien qui sont suivis, ces données sont suivies d'une manière irrégulière. Donc, pour les contraintes, nous avons, comment dirais-je, des contraintes, d'où les contraintes financières qu'il faut aussi noter. Nous avons des contraintes, ça signifie que, comme les données ne sont pas suivies ou sont suivies d'une manière irrégulière, ça veut dire qu'il y a un problème de financement, insuffisance de financement ou défaut de financement. Pour les conséquences, je viens de parler des conséquences, mais nous avons aussi, sur le plan ressources, l'expertise qui produit sur le plan producteur et utilisation, nous avons aussi peut-être, il y a insuffisance du point de vue expertise en nombre et en qualité. Donc, il faudra renforcer, parce que j'ai revu à la fois les propositions d'amélioration. Il faudra renforcer cette expertise, aussi bien en nombre qu'en qualité. Le matériel, dans les bases de données que nous avons, il y a absence actuellement, ou plus ou moins absence de support de collecte de l'information. Donc, il faudra greffer dans ces bases des supports de collecte qui sont spécifiques au genre ou en lien avec le genre. Nous avons noté aussi les manques de synergie. Nous avons des cloisonnements au niveau des entités qui produisent les données. De ce fait, nous avons, donc il faudra renforcer ces synergies au niveau national pour qu'on puisse aboutir quand même à, comment dirais-je, à optimiser la ressource. Il y a aussi le problème utilisateur de données, producteur de données. Je pense que tout cet environnement mérite d'être renforcé pour la disponibilité de ces données. C'est tout ce que nous avions à échanger sur les libellés. Mais nous avons aussi d'autres, comment dirais-je, suggestions concernant... je ne sais pas si on pouvait présenter un peu les résultats de tests qui ont été obtenus, ou bien on va le faire après.
We have just 1 more minute, so if you want to share a brief summary,
Okay.
in 1 minute. Now, please.
D'accord. D'accord, après.
Okay.
D'accord, merci.
Okay, thank you. So for complementing this response, and also from the experience that you have had so far in Brazil, Ana Carolina, if you want to add.
Okay,
your insights.
Thank you, Laura. So in Brazil, during the consultations with the institutions, the model presented for filling in information on the existence of data for future calculations of gender indicators within the scope of SDG 6 raised positive perceptions on the part of several institutions interlocutors who considered the approach interesting and valid, and who declared the possibility to be adopted in the future in data collection. They identified the possibility of improving their procedures by inserting complementary questions about gender, and recognized the importance of having and analyzing them. The general perception, both social and political, is that there is a gender inequality, of course, in several areas of the country: employment, education, health, including access to water and sanitation. The actions fronts, however, are very much focused in bringing the problem to the forefront for debate and raising everyone's awareness, welcoming and supporting women and providing transparency to the problems involved in gender relations. It is only currently that public policies are being developed in this context. As I exemplified earlier on the program for protection and promotion of menstrual health, for example. Internalizing, however, gender aspects in water and sanitation management in Brazil is, of course, still a challenge. With the realization of the pilot in Brazil, it was still noticed a lack of concern or commitment in the institutions in structuring databases, also focused in gender approach. It was noticed, therefore, that the requested information about gender in the proposed model for the pilot test can effectively inspire the institutionalization of the team at the technical operational level, so that the analysis and approach on gender equity can effectively promote the improvement and the innovation in public policies on this topic. There is still a short stage of qualified people to deal specifically with this topic in the country, which is very limited to academic areas. Therefore, the training of gender specialists who work on different fronts, such as the management of water resources, in addition to training technicians in collection and analyzing data to calculate indicators, raising awareness among decision makers, seeking information, elucidating this reality with facts are relevant and the strategic initiatives to be promoted.
Wonderful. So thank you very much. And now I pass the floor again to Petunia online. Please, Petunia, just for your last comment on how do you think this framework can be helpful for your country? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much once more. This framework, from our view, thank you very much. This framework is going to be very useful in our country because we see it as an opportunity for us to improve, especially on those things that we have not been able to achieve on. Firstly, there is political will to drive the gender mainstreaming, as this is a key government program. But coming back to the water and sanitation sector, there is that drive, and as I've indicated, the commitments that have been made by our minister. Secondly, the policy reviews that we are doing need to consider some of the new ideas that are coming in. And however, this can also only be achieved if we strengthen capacity building, skills transfer on issues of research, improving on the database, on the gender, and also creating an enabling environment, especially for the previously disadvantaged, those that are in the rural areas. Because sometimes we talk about that there is improvement, only to realize that it's more happening at an urban area. There is also there's going to be what is referred to as a gender seal. It's sort of a certification that government, public institutions will be given, where we will be assessed around how we are doing on issues of gender mainstreaming. So as a department, together with our entities, we are looking forward into see how we will fare around that. In terms of the SDG gender contextualization, as I've indicated, by virtue that all the working streams on SDG 6, here I've now adopted gender mainstreaming, disability and youth as part of the agenda items and discussion to ensure that it's cut across all those streams. We intend to see a magnificent improvement in terms of how this is implemented. And we are hoping that soon we will be able to we'll be able to start with the pilot. But if we are not able to, we are committing that the outcomes of this pilot are going to be implemented in the water and sanitation sector in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Petunia. And I want to thank our three speakers. So it is it's a very good news to hear that there is political will, that there are in the three countries, there is no question that this is important, this is a priority. There are many needs, also on training, on coordination. I think the three countries have also mentioned the important and very appropriate for this year topic of partnership, of cooperating, of bringing all relevant stakeholders together, and how to collect data, how to deal with data, how to share, how to complete databases, how to avoid overlapping, and bringing all to the table. And also, you have mentioned that it has been very interesting that gender, so we talk about women empowerment, we talk about men on the table, but we also talk about different groups that can be under different kind of vulnerabilities, marginalization, so all having a voice for bringing together all these concepts. So thank you very much. So thank you also for the efforts of Brazil so far. For the country Senegal, we wish good luck on all the implementation, and we hope South Africa is joining. And with this, I thank the panelists, thank you, Petunia, and I pass the floor back to Rick. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could ask our panelists to remain up here, we have time for some question and answer, some feedback from the audience. And I'd like to start, well, first, if I can take the opportunity to say that I'm glad to hear, especially from Brazil and Senegal, who've implemented this pilot, that the process was useful. Even just having it on the agenda. I think it was Petunia who said, if gender is not on the agenda, it doesn't happen. So if this assessment can be an opportunity for coordination and discussion, that's great. We also hear, though, that the process was heavy, that it can be improved, and actually we already have a second version of the assessment tool that's available on the IMI website. The link is in the chat, so please do follow up on that. I would like to see if anyone from the audience has questions, but we have one question already from the online chat, so I'm going to turn to our panelists to address this one. And maybe particularly for Brazil and Senegal, where you've done a review and you've found that there were a lot of data gaps, that there were a few indicators fully available, more partially available, but even more just not available. So maybe this links to the question from Kanok Jongjarb, who's asking, what is the gender aspect that is still missing in the available data and can help advance the gender contextualization of SDG 6? So after your review, what is the thing you would like to have that you've identified as missing? And Petunia, perhaps from South Africa, you can also step in on this. So maybe if I could ask Anna, then Maimuna, then Petunia, just to quickly reflect on your wish list, having gone through the review.
Okay. Well, on Brazil, let's go. On Brazil, we have I think the bigger challenge is the size of our country. Okay, so we have all the indicators. Okay, but we have the biggest challenge. It's because our country is so big and the realities are so different that at some points, for example, we have of the country, we have how to disaggregate this data very easily, but in other areas of the country, you don't have anything about the disaggregation or data. So for us, when I said that 78 indicators doesn't have the information that is the biggest challenge for us, because we are very big and we have a lot of committees, and it's the size of the country, you know. So I think this is the most challenging thing, and maybe with the pre-pilot, the awareness that we bring to those committees or those small committees will permit that we have this data in the future or currently already. But right now, I think the size of our country is a big challenge for us to collect these databases. We have a good information about the committees that are federal. For example, one is a water agency, and we take care of all the river basins that are federal. So for those ones, we have a lot of information and structured because we take care of them. But for the states, it's more difficult.
Yeah, federal countries are very difficult. It's really interesting that river basins are a way to collect information across different regions even.
Yeah.
And Maimouna, after your review, is there a particular data gap that you think would be important to fill?
Oui, concernant cette question, nous nous focalisons sur les données qui ne sont pas disponibles et qui représentent 18%, c'est-à-dire 22 indicateurs des 100, parce que le cadre contenait 115 indicateurs, mais il y a eu quand même des propositions intéressantes, ce qui nous amène à 122. Et sur les 122 qui sont exploités, nous disposons de 22 indicateurs qui ne sont pas non disponibles et qui représentent 18%. Et parmi ces indicateurs, pourquoi j'évoque cette question, nous avons, c'est l'indicateur 631 qui représente 45% et l'indicateur 6.1 et 6.2 où il y a 44%. Donc c'est un défi énorme à relever pour pouvoir les recueillir, voir les stratégies qu'il faut mettre en place, pour les dispositifs qu'il faut mettre en place, les outils de collecte qu'il faut mettre en place pour pouvoir les collecter. La deuxième chose qu'on vient de le dire, c'est général. C'est surtout la désagrégation, l'autre donnée. L'ensemble des propositions sont très pertinentes, sont intéressantes, mais il reste comment désagréger cette désagrégation. Le pouvoir de pouvoir désagréger ces données, c'est ça qui pose problème. Mais je pense que la réflexion reste et il faut pousser cette question d'une manière approfondie pour arriver à désagréger l'ensemble des données qui sont pertinentes et qui seront sélectionnées. C'est important. Merci.
Thank you so much. No, that's an excellent point about the need to be able to disaggregate data. Even if data are available, but you can't disaggregate, their utility can be limited. Petunia, I know you haven't gone through the review, but was there anything from South Africa you wanted to share about some missing data that you think would be important to have?
Thank you once more for the opportunity. I think for us, as we engage, what is coming out is that as much as this pilot study is about South Africa, we've got this transboundary or shared water costs that we have with the neighboring countries. And as we do this pilot, we will have to later to what does it mean within the transboundary, so that we don't leave them behind. And because if we do, that would also have an impact in terms of how we approach. So there's already engagement around how the gender issues from those different bodies also start engaging, even if we will not yet started with the pilot. And that's why I said despite the outcomes are still going to be very, very important. But also as you would know, with the reforms that are currently happening in South Africa, we've got the water allocation reform in terms of allocating the water resources from our catchments. And there's this drive around the triple B to say women must benefit on the irrigation, on the businesses and all that. And that is something that is still being discussed around how you ensure that from a SDG perspective, the water allocation reform does not leave issues of gender mainstreaming behind. Thank you very much. I think those are the 2 points that have been coming out strongly that we should look into post the pilot, though we've not done the research.
Thank you so much, Petunia. That's great. We do have a few minutes left, so now I would like to open to people who are here in person. Maybe Laura, if you could take the microphone over, and we can either have some reflections or targeted questions for our panelists.
Thank you very much. Is this on?
And if you could just say who you are when you pose your question.
Do I need to do something? Oh, can you hear me? Okay. Great. So my name is Christine. I'm here representing Sanitation and Water for All. I'm the senior media advisor there. But my other hat, and I'm not here formally in this capacity, is with UN Women for the Compact on Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action. So I love seeing these gender and WASH worlds come together. That's really exciting for me. And I've only been in the WASH world for maybe 8 or 9 months. So apologies if this is obvious to the more seasoned gender WASH experts in the room. But 2 questions. The first one maybe for you, Rick, is I see a lot of folks from UN Water, UNICEF, WHO, JMP, UNESCO, UN Women just put out a report on the feminist agenda for the water crisis. Curious how you're all working together or what that collaboration is, and then if you have any plans for or wishes for better collaboration across all the folks that are doing data analysis on WASH and gender. And then second question for the panel. It was great to hear that, in South Africa, there seems like there's political will. We've been talking a lot on my team at UN Women about kind of a waning interest that we're seeing in a lot of gender issues. I saw ODA, for example, listed as one of the indicators that we can be looking at. OECD Doc has said that gender, in terms of ODA, is plateauing. So just curious, from your experience, and you sort of touched on it a little bit, but what is one way that we get countries actually excited about gender and about this data collection and make sure that actually happens?
Okay, I'll quickly respond, and maybe I can ask if any one of our panelists wants to tackle that question, just because we need to give UN Water, Will Reedhead, time to close. But just how are we all working together? Well, that's exactly the purpose of the Integrated Monitoring Initiative, is to bring together the different custodian agencies involved in monitoring the SDGs. And this gender contextualization is a cross-cutting project. So all of the agencies have been trying to think how gender contextualization could be done with their specific indicator. So that's kind of a vertical approach. But then when we come to the country level, we bring everyone together in the same room. So there is a longitudinal or a horizontal approach as well. And Will might want to say something on that in his closing. But for the question about waning interest and how we can stimulate desire to collect gender data or gender relevant data, I don't know if Anna or Petunia or Maimuna, something came to mind quickly and briefly?
Petunia, you wanna? I can't.
Maybe, please go ahead, Anna.
Ok, então, almost talking in Portuguese here, people, sorry. So how we can do that, and how we can promote this interest to bring together the women and the WASH agenda. I think that the awareness is the most important thing. You are like for eight months that is said about how the time that you're in the sector or knowing all the sector. And I'm a geologist. I'm always work with rocks and suddenly with groundwater and water. And then when I started to working with the water, I saw the reality and how those things connect, how gender and water are connected. And I think that how we can do that, promote this this interest in the public part or in the society, it's really bringing the data. That's why this study, it's so important, because when we saw the data and when we relate the reality of water, that is a subject that is so technical, right? When you talk about water, we are talking with engineering guys and really hard stuff, But when we put the water in our lives and we collect this data, we saw the necessity of and the importance of the subject. So I guess that the knowledge, the data, and the promotion, like we have to talk about it. We have to spread the news to the world, because it's not a link that is directly made when we talk about the both things. But when we bring together the data and the reality, we saw that's very important subject to talk.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I think that's a great message to end on, is that just having the data can be a conversation starter and an entry point to larger questions of gender and water and sanitation. So let's have a big round of applause for our three panelists. And I'm going to turn over the microphone to Will Reedhead with UN Water for some closing remarks. If you could, I think Will's camera might be available also. If we could see him, that would be great.
Well, I'm not sure how much you actually want to see me, but if you can, let's do that. Thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks for a great discussion. We're already a couple minutes over time, so actually I'm going to dispense with really inspirational reflections on the end, just to say that I think these are great discussions, and I see both the challenges and the opportunities that we face for integrating gender into the SDG 6 global indicators. I just could conclude with a bit of a reminder that this is part of a bigger undertaking that the Integrated Monitoring Initiative is doing during its third phase. We spent the last 7 years really just trying to get as much data as possible for these global processes, but we realize that the bigger impact is to be had by empowering countries to use these data for their own purposes, their own policymaking. But it became very clear that having one single value for each indicator for a country is not going to get you very far other than raising awareness. To be really meaningful for policymaking, it has to be disaggregatable. And if it can't be disaggregated, it can be contextualized. So the gender is the first parameter we're using to try to add a resolution to these global indicators, but there will be others. We're working on water basins, other geographic administrative units. Eventually we may come to how to contextualize climate into the indicators, or human rights. So this gender work is really the landmark undertaking for us to see how all of this would work in practice. There are lots of institutional challenges, as we're seeing. There are budgetary challenges, there are technical data challenges, but it sounds like it is worth doing. So thank you for being with us and listening to this. But just to come back to these last couple of questions, and this leads us, so the first question from Christina, I think your name was, from SWA. As Rick said, IMI itself is a multi-agency collaboration. We're bringing together all of our parts. And by the way, I would just add, it's not just WASH. That's one of the things that's actually quite challenging about this, is that whereas drinking water and sanitation lends itself relatively easily to actual disaggregation, the other indicators on water quality and on water use and ecosystems is not nearly as straightforward. So we're really looking at contextualizing for the entire goal. But we are collaborating with many different organizations. We have a group of gender experts, and UN Women is represented there. In fact, they're one of our closest collaborators on this work. I should just add that the UN Women Gender Spotlight report that you mentioned is actually a co-publication with UN Water. So this is very much a collaborative effort. To be honest, I'm not sure how closely we've engaged SWA, but I think we should definitely make sure that we do keep them involved as well. And then on Marin's question about what about lessons learned? Well, that actually brings me to kind of the final statement about what happens next. So we're continuing with 2 or 3 more pilot countries. So we're hoping that South Africa will be one of them. And we're also working with Philippines has just started, and hopefully Palestine will work as well. And we're also doing this desk review, we're calling it. We're getting inputs from other experts like yourselves. And as my colleague Maggie mentioned, we'd be if you're interested in reviewing the draft assessment framework we have, just drop us an email to monitoring@unwater.org, and we'd be happy to involve you and get your feedback on these same methods that these pilots are looking at. So in the coming months, we hope to finish this kind of learning process. And then, yes, we're definitely going to pull together all the findings from the pilots and the other sources that we have. We're going to continue consulting our gender experts, and we are going to compile this into both a refined framework that countries can use for the actual mainstreaming of gender into water and sanitation policy, but also various lessons learned platforms. And the institutional side of things is particularly interesting and particularly challenging. So we're definitely keen on hearing what countries have learned on the institutional side. So that's all to be coming in the coming months. And that, of course, will be followed by actual capacity building about how to use these tools in countries. So this will be part of Integrated Monitoring Initiative's overall capacity building approach, where to date we focus just on the global indicators, but over time we're going to be focusing more and more on means for disaggregation and contextualization in countries. So keep watching this spot. We've got lots of great things coming on. And I would just like to then wrap this up by saying once again, thank you very much to Senegal, Brazil, and South Africa, and to all of you for being with us here today in the room, and I wish you a great World Water Week. Bye, everybody.